these guys don't like those guys, and maybe these guys can tolerate me and those ones won't. You don't have any idea of that. It'll take you up to 10 years to get a real sense of that, because remember, you're focused on trying to rebuild your life.
To avoid further tensions, should government be looking at the placement of those refugees and migrants?
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panelists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Thursday the 7th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Pierce, and Carol Malone.
Hello. Now, Jeremy Hunt delivered his make-or-break budget-cutting national insurance by 2%. Labour call it a last desperate act.
£6 billion will be pumped into the NHS to cut bureaucracy and reduce waiting times. Have we heard that before?
Yeah.
Is that money well spent?
Who's it? Is it me now? OK, Rochdale Football Club is on the brink. The Manchester-based club faces liquidation by the end of the month. But it looks like the club might be saved by a US investor. We'll be joined by the club chairman shortly.
What they need is a Hollywood actor. Remember Wrexham Football Club?
What, for Rochdale?
Yeah, it was saved by an American actor or film star.
Didn't Elton John buy...
He bought Watford and put them on the map.
Did it?
Yeah, they did very well. Yeah, it did. They were in the first division.
Who was it? Ryan Gosling owns a football team.
Something like that.
Yeah, it is.
Carol Malone and I, what we know about football,
Nothing.
you could put it on the back of a shrunken postage stamp, but I think it's an important story because a football club is an important part of the local community.
Maybe George Galloway could buy it.
He's the local MP.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on it and our talking points. Say email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you and good morning. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. Jeremy Hunt says the Conservatives' ambition to end national insurance won't happen anytime soon. Around £10 billion has been spent on a 2p cut to the insurance rate, but its benefits are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. The non-dom tax status has also been scrapped, meaning that wealthy foreign residents will no longer get a tax break. To other news, average house prices rose by 0.4% last month, the 5th monthly increase in a row. Halifax found property prices grew by 1.7% on an annual basis compared with 2.3% the previous month. The average British home now costs just under £292,000. It comes after the government cut capital gains tax in yesterday's budget, which is expected to encourage more house sales. A new train service between London and central Scotland has been given the go-ahead. The rail regulator approved plans to operate 4 daily return services between London Euston and the city of Stirling. It'll create new competition for LNER, which currently operates services on the route. Grand Union Trains is due to launch its new services by June next year. And nationwide building societies reached an agreement to buy Virgin Money in a deal worth £2.9 billion. The planned takeover aims to create a combined lender worth more than £366 billion. It would eventually see the Virgin Money brand disappear, though Nationwide says it has no plans to cut jobs in the near term. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. alerts. Now let's get you straight back to Carol and Andrew.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GBNews with Andrew Pearce and just about Carol Malone because she did an untimely...
I had to nip out.
She did have to nip out.
I had to nip out to the loo.
Now, that was the make or break budget. What did it do for you?
It didn't do very much. You know, your paper said it today. You know, we needed pyrotechnics, but we didn't get any. And as your paper quite rightly pointed out, it said, if this had been a government that was, like, steady, and if it had been, like, in charge and control, and it wasn't an election year, it would have probably been a good, sound budget. But it's boring, isn't it?
It was boring, it was dull. I really thought there had to be something in addition to the 2 billion, to the 2p cut in national insurance, because it had been so widely trailed. Well, it was the make or break budget. It was delivered yesterday, and here is the Chancellor. Just take a listen to what he was saying yesterday.
From April the 6th, employee national insurance will be cut by another 2p from 10% to 8%. And self-employed national insurance will be cut from 8% to 6%. It means an additional £450 a year for the average employee, or £350 for someone self-employed. When combined with the autumn reductions, it means 27 million employees will get an average tax cut of £900 a year.
Conservatives will abolish the non-dom tax regime. James Murray, the Labour MP for North Ealing, gave his reaction on GB News Breakfast Show.
Well, look, the Conservatives' position on the non-dom tax is the most almighty U-turn. You know, it's a humiliating U-turn. I've been the Shadow Financial Secretary for a few years now, and I've had minister after minister come in to explain why it's the wrong policy, it doesn't add up, they can't possibly support it, it'd be bad for our economy and so on. And then they just nick it, lock, stock and barrel. So really, it's a humiliating U-turn for the Conservatives to announce this policy yesterday. We're obviously going to review what's happened and adapt how we're going to pay for our policies accordingly and set out our plans. But going into the election, all of our plans will be fully funded and fully costed.
Well, that was exciting, wasn't it? And the former Transport Minister and the Tory MP for Copeland, Trudy Harrison, she joined Nigel Farage on GB News last night. He was broadcasting in Whitehaven in Cumbria, where, of course, Bev Turner was yesterday. She gave her reaction to the, in my view, distinctly underwhelming budget.
I got the memo. Sticking to the plan. Don't want to go back to square one. Yes, we've ticked many of the boxes. Growth is up slightly. Better than Germany, better than France, better than Italy.
I thought we were in recession.
But it's still up.
They try, don't they, to be loyal. Look, it was boring. Now, boring budgets are often better, but
if you're running a successful economy, they're better.
We're potentially 6 months away from it, because I think the idea now of the May election, I've wasted my £5 bet with Paddy Power. Actually, I had a tenner on a May election because I thought they can't risk boat crossing throughout the summer. No. There were 400, by the way, the other day, across the channel. Interest rates could go the wrong... Inflation could go the wrong way. They can't risk it. It'll go for May election. There was nothing in that budget to me that suggested there was an early election.
This was supposed to be the budget, Pierce, wasn't it, that was going to get the Tories re-elected. Yeah. But I think what it's done is guaranteed the death of them, don't you?
Yeah. The other thing... It's just dishonest for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to say the average family now will be £450 better off thanks to the national insurance cut. Yes. Because council tax is going up by 5% in just about every council in the country. If you have the misfortune to live in Labour-controlled Birmingham, going up 20%. But the other thing is the tax thresholds are not rising with inflation. No. So they're not going to change till 2028. So more people are going to be taken into the 40p tax rate, 45p tax rate, including pensions.
Pensions are going to be paying more tax. It is interesting, isn't it, that this budget was supposed to give us a reason to vote Tory again. It was supposed to be full of big giveaways. It was going to give the party a real boost. It's going to do the very opposite. And I was reading Professor John Curtis today, the big electoral pollster, and he was talking about, and you don't think this is going to happen, that he was talking about they could call a May election.
They could.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't.
Why not?
I think it was a possibility because he'd have to dissolve Parliament by March the 26th. Yes. Will you have got the Rwanda? Will you have got a plane up in the air to Rwanda? That's a problem. Yeah. And the tax cuts, the national insurance cut, announced yesterday won't kick in until April. People won't have even noticed it.
And when you talk to people out there, they're not really interested in a national insurance cut.
No.
You know, all the polls that I've seen and all the people I've spoken to, what they say is they don't want tax cuts. They actually want public services to be better. They want benefits cut. A lot of people want benefits cut. A lot of people want the money that we spend on immigration cut. And what they don't need is this. And, you know, he already announced this is twice in 1 year he's cut the national insurance.
Yeah.
But people don't care about it because they're not going to feel it very much.
And I think he should have been... That was a brilliant... The Prime Minister's speech after the Rochdale by-election victory for George Gallo was very good and very interesting, but he should have gone further. He should have said, and we are going to cut immigration.
Yes.
Because that was the dominant issue.
Yes.
Migration, Gaza, big issue, and he should have said, we're going to cut it, and this is how we're going to do it.
Don't know why Sunak doesn't get that immigration is a big thing.
I know. Well, let's go to Westminster, because it's still buzzing. It always is the day after the budget, and we're going to talk now to our political correspondent, Olivia Rutley. I was with her in the Westminster studio only yesterday. Olivia, what is the reaction on the ground? Are Tory MPs buoyant now? They think that the Chancellor's delivered them an election-winning budget, or are they a little bit underwhelmed?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say that buoyant is the word. I think underwhelmed fits the bill more closely. Lots of Conservative MPs are very annoyed that Jeremy Hunt didn't do anything about those income tax thresholds that we were talking about yesterday. Yes, a 2p cut in national insurance puts a bit of money back in the average worker's pocket, but that is completely eclipsed by the fact that those income tax thresholds aren't moving. By 2027, people will be considerably worse off than they would have been had those thresholds risen with inflation over the last 5 years, even when you take into account those national insurance cuts. Take into account, too, the rise in council tax, and the average household is definitely worse off than it should have been at this point. Labour are making hay with that. They're pointing out that living standards have gone down over 13 years of Tory rule. What makes things quite awkward for Labour is the fact that Jeremy Hunt decided to steal their non-DOMS policy. Every time you hear a Labour politician come on the airwaves over the last year or so, every single expensive policy that they have pledged is going to be paid for, apparently, by scrapping the non-dom tax status. Well, Jeremy Hunt has very much taken the wind out of Labour's sails by doing it in advance. So I think we're going to expect to have to see Rachel Reeves come up with a pretty clever plan for how she is now going to pay for all the things that she's promised without raising taxes. I mean, as you said, Andrew, yesterday you and I were talking about, we assumed that there was going to be some big centrepiece of the budget. The national insurance cut was trailed in advance, so we thought, well, there must be something else. There must be a rabbit that Jeremy Hunt is about to pull out of the hat. There was no rabbit. He did suggest, there was a hint, for one moment I thought that he was planning on combining national insurance and income tax to simplify the UK tax code. That's something which probably would go down pretty well with Conservative MPs, but he ended up actually bottling it. He said that would be a long-term goal of the Conservative Party. Why didn't he do it yesterday? Well, for one thing, it would be expensive and possibly inflationary, but also pensioners pay income tax. They don't pay national insurance. If you rolled the two into one, you would probably have to raise income tax, and that would annoy the grey vote, as it's known, and the grey vote turns up on polling day to vote. So that is not something a Conservative Chancellor would do in election year. It all felt very, very cautious, not like an election budget, not like a party who sort of have nothing to lose, which you might think would be the thinking at this point, with so far behind in the polls. But there were no bangs, there were no whistles, there were no rabbits. Maybe there's going to be another budget before the next election.
Do you think they're spooked? Because I talked to some Tory MPs yesterday, Olivia. They were spooked by the reaction of the markets to the Liz Truss mini-budget. Yeah. The pound went crashing through the floor, interest rates soared, mortgage rates went up. People directly blamed the Tories for that. If he had cut income tax as well, was he worried that would spook the markets and then there'd be another meltdown? And that's what they couldn't risk, which is why we had this utterly risk-averse approach.
I think there is definitely an element of that. Jeremy Hunt is terrified of doing anything like what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did, and possibly he's ended up going too far the other way. Didn't dare to be bold because of the risk of spooking the markets. Jeremy Hunt has said over and over again that this is a responsible budget. He wants to show that the Conservatives are the sort of safe pair of hands when it comes to the economy. So that sort of precluded him from doing anything bold. But of course, you could argue that he ended up being too cautious, particularly as that national insurance cut was trailed in advance. And of course, it's exactly the same thing as he did in November. And as we know, there was no boost to the Tories' fortunes in the polls when he did the same thing in November. You know, some people are saying it's the most obvious sign of madness, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Olivia, we know that he was taking notice of the Office for Budget Responsibility, which had advised him in recent days that he didn't have the 30 billion to give away that he thought he had. But you know, why do governments still take notice of these bodies themselves who admit? It was a guy called David Miles the other day. He said what we say isn't gospel, and you know the OBR predictions they're just not out. They're wildly out. They're billions and billions out. Why do governments time after time take notice, and the markets?
Well, I think that's a really, really interesting question. I mean, as you say, OBR forecasts are almost never right. The problem is that if you ignore them, as Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did, they didn't even talk about the OBR forecast in that disastrous mini budget, then it ends up sort of scaring the markets. So these politicians are sort of stuck in this doom loop of you have to pay attention to these forecasts, even if they are so often wrong, because if you don't, it will scare the markets and you could end up with a run on the pound. That seems to be what they're worried about, but it does sort of hem them in a little bit, as we saw yesterday. Jeremy Hunt, you know, I think his instincts as a chancellor, when he was campaigning to be Tory leader, he did talk about tax cuts. I think deep down he does believe in a smaller state, in a low tax country, in, you know, handing on what you've earned to your family, all of these conservative principles, but he doesn't feel as though he's got sort of any wiggle room at all. He feels hemmed in, and I think that's really what we saw yesterday. Doesn't really feel like it's going to be enough to get people out voting Conservative on polling day.
OK, Olivia, thank you very much. Now, speaking of the grey vote, you're an unhappy grey voter, aren't you, Andrew? You're very grey.
A bit personal.
Well,
naturally grey.
A bit of badgery.
Naturally grey. Yeah. But what you say about the Office of Budget Responsibility is spot on, because there was a report the other day suggesting in the 13 years since it was set up by George Osborne...
I know the figure you're going to quote.
£576 billion out.
Yes.
That's how... So that every budget, they've got it every year, more than £50 billion wrong, and yet everything was predicated...
And even the people on the committee, they say time and time again, you know, what we say, we don't get it right. We get it wrong more times to get it right.
But because Liz Truss and co ignored the OBR, that's the trouble. Now, up next, what do small businesses make of the budget? We're going to cross to the West Midlands to see what people there think. Key electoral battleground, of course. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
So after his mad dash to see his father last week, Prince Harry predictably went on TV to talk about it. He gave his first interview to Good Morning America, whilst apparently being filmed by a crew that were doing a documentary on the Invictus Games. He didn't disclose his father's diagnosis, but frankly, even the fact that he was on TV talking about it was concerning. No wonder they're keeping him at arm's length. This is what he said.
How did you get the news that the King was ill?
I spoke to him.
And what did you do next?
I jumped on a plane and went to go and see him as soon as I could.
How was that visit for you emotionally?
Look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to get on a plane and go and see him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that.
An illness in the family can have a galvanizing or sort of reunifying effect for a family. Absolutely. Is that possible in this case?
Yeah, I'm sure. Throughout all these families, I see it on a day-to-day basis. The strength of the family unit coming together.
He also said that he loves his family, but then he said that he had his own family in America. So which family does he love? The late Queen's last few years of life were marred with accusations of racism, which Harry later backtracked on, claiming that they hadn't actually used the word, so inadvertently admitting to gaslighting us all. But the Sussex's stock is falling in the States, and the only thing that makes them interesting is their proximity to the royal family. And now the king is ill, Harry has even offered to muck in and take on official duties to help his father. Look, I want to see reconciliation and love and joy, but I'm afraid Meghan has yet to even speak to her father as far as we know, and Harry didn't apparently even reach out to his brother. Whilst his dad might fall for it, I doubt William will be as soft. Good luck with that, Harry.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panelists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, let's cross live to Tamworth now with our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson. He's going to be talking to small businesses.
Yeah, good morning to you both. We're here in Tamworth and in Bellow, a printing and merchandising company, getting some reaction, of course, to some of the promises, some of the commitments that Jeremy Hunt made to the dispatch box yesterday in his budget. We're joined with the director, Carl Raffo. Carl, tell us a little bit about your reaction to the budget. What did you make of what Jeremy Hunt said yesterday?
I think clearly it lays a pathway to an election, so no real surprises on that side. And ultimately, you know, they've got to whet the appetite of voters.
And I mean, it was lots of promises. One of the things, of course, full expensing. I mean, there's somebody here that must buy a lot of equipment. That extension of that must be, you know, something that you're quite pleased about.
I am pleased with that, although there's very little in the budget for SMEs, so full expensing does allow us to hopefully benefit from all of the equipment that we have here and the leasing side of that. So there is a small win in the budget for us.
I mean, there were some maybe businesses across the country that were disappointed there wasn't anything to do with business rates. Is that a feeling that you share there?
Look, everyone wants something out of the budget for them, so I would love to see budget rates in there. But ultimately, you know, it does recognise a powerhouse of every business, which is for people. And I think the national insurance cut does add some real value to our team and our employees.
Now, as well as, of course, running this business, you've also been a paramedic as well. There were some commitments on the NHS yesterday, particularly around kind of efficiency and productivity. What did you make of what he said there, having worked in the NHS?
I think my experience, having been a paramedic, is that no amount of money can buy our way out of this issue. The real issue for me is while AI does help, and I love seeing that coming in, there is a culture of blame, excuses and denial, and we really need to get the core of the issue resolved, which is efficiency and the people and the leadership.
And just kind of from a point of running a business at the moment, we know that there are increasing costs and there are cost pressures on people. What is the reality of running a business at the moment?
Business is tough, but you know what? I think there's often a mindset from business owners that the government is there to bail us out, but we've got to take some responsibility. We've got to step up and actually be accountable for running a profitable organisation. So it is tough, but we've got to remain positive.
Yeah, and to kind of sum up the budget yesterday, do you think it was positive from Jeremy Hunt? Are you pleased? What's kind of your feeling overall?
I think, it is a budget to whet the appetite of voters. That is the bottom line. Would I like to see more? Absolutely. But do you know what? No budget will please everyone. I'm relatively happy, and I'm hearing good feedback from the team.
All right, Carl, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's a little bit of a perspective from here in Tamworth, of course, and a small business about what that budget has really had an impact on the ground.
That's our Westminster reporter, Jack Carson. Coming up, we're talking to that Tory MP who's so cross about EastEnders because it's depicted his constituency as a drug-infested dump.
Yeah, it's Milton Keynes we're talking about. Yeah. So if anybody's in Milton Keynes and you're upset about it, give us a call. But have you been to Milton Keynes?
I lost Mrs Thatcher in Milton Keynes.
You said...
In the 2001 general election. How I managed to lose one of the most famous, high-profile women in the world.
Did she give you a clip around the ear?
No, I just got into a lot of trouble with the Times news desk who I was working with because I was meant to be spending the day with her. And
People ought to know that Pierce actually has a life-sized, like a thing of Mrs Thatcher, cutout of Mrs Thatcher in his living room.
No, it's in the study.
And he brings it out for parties so that we have to pay homage as we walk in before we get a drink.
And if people don't like her, they nearly have a heart attack because suddenly there's Margaret Thatcher. Oh, my God. And I have one next to her of Joan Collins.
Yes, and...
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. While the cold easterly wind will continue for eastern areas through today, there's also a risk of showers later. But across the west, plenty of sunshine to start the day, and it should stay fairly dry and bright through much of the day across many southwestern areas of England, western areas of Wales, northwestern England, Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland seeing the best of the sunshine through the day, and it will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine. However, the cloud will thicken a little bit, particularly for central areas of England and Wales. That brings a risk of showers this afternoon that could turn quite heavy. There's also a risk of showers into parts of northern England and eastern Scotland throughout this evening as well, but those showers will push further north and west into more northern areas of Wales, possibly reaching Northern Ireland later on in the night. Further south, it will turn much drier and clearer. We could see some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, but also some frost out there, so it could be a bit of a colder start tomorrow morning than this morning. But that easterly wind will continue across eastern areas throughout Friday, particularly northeastern Scotland, and where we'll see some drizzly rain across parts of Aberdeenshire, as well as northeastern areas of England seeing some of that wetter and cloudier weather. Across the south and east, though, it will be a much drier and brighter day on Friday, and it will start to feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine with highs around 12 or 13 degrees. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up next, Carol Malone is going to give her, as always, reasoned and moderate thoughts on Gary Goldsmith, who is the uncle of the Princess of Wales, who is in the Big Brother house. She was famous in the Big Brother house too. Not for very long, as I recall.
I was in for quite a long time, Piers.
She was. So we'll be talking about that because, of course, that is causing quite a stir, as if the royal family's got enough on its plate.
I know, without him in there, I know.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. That's all coming up in a bit. And also we're talking to the MP who's upset about the way EastEnders is depicted his constituency as a drug-infested dump. Is that fair? What's Milton Keynes done to deserve that?
Well, you were there. I mean, that's isn't a plaque for you there. Anyway.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 a.m. on March the 7th. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Karen Malone.
And the BBC is facing calls to apologise for how they've depicted Milton Keynes in EastEnders. We're going to have the local Tory MP on shortly, and he's very, very cross.
Doing the devil's work. That's how one vicar describes wedding planners. You don't want to miss this story.
Jeremy Hunt delivered his make-or-break budget. Did you stay awake? Cutting national insurance by 2%. Here is the Chancellor yesterday.
A plan to grow the economy versus no plan. A plan for better public services versus no plan. A plan to make work pay versus no plan. Growth up, jobs up, taxes down.
Now, Labour have slammed the budget, calling it a last desperate act. Their MP for North Ealing, James Murray, spoke to GB News this morning.
Yesterday, we saw the budget the Chancellor delivered, but nothing in that budget changes the fact that taxes are going up to their highest in 70 years, that people across Britain feel worse off, that we've had 14 years of economic failure from the Conservatives, and frankly, that's why it's time for change and time for a general election.
And we're also going to be talking about the Princess of Wales' uncle, Gary Gather, in the Big Brother household. Caroline will bring quite an interesting perspective to that because she was famously in the Big Brother household for a little while.
All I'll say is just wait till they introduce lots of alcohol, see what Gary says then.
Yeah, indeed. Do email us, tell us what you think about the budget. If you are somebody who watches EastEnders, what do you think about the depiction of Milton Keynes? gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you and good morning. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. Jeremy Hunt says the Conservatives' ambition to end national insurance won't happen anytime soon. Around £10 billion has been spent on a 2p cut to the insurance rate, but its benefits are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. The non-dom tax status has also been scrapped, meaning that wealthy foreign residents will no longer get a tax break. Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, accused the Chancellor of pinching his policies.
Well, look, the Conservatives' position on the non-dom tax is the most almighty U-turn. It's a humiliating U-turn. I've been the Shadow Financial Secretary for a few years now, and I've had minister after minister come in to explain why it's the wrong policy, it doesn't add up, they can't possibly support it, it'd be bad for our economy and so on. And then they just nick it, lock, stock and barrel. So really, it's a humiliating U-turn for the Conservatives to announce this policy yesterday. We're obviously going to review what's happened and adapt how we're going to pay for our policies accordingly and set out our plans. But going into the election, all of our plans will be fully funded and fully costed.
Forecasters are predicting household disposable income to fall by 0.9%. That would make this Parliament the first in modern history to see a drop in living standards. We asked residents in Nottingham for their reaction to yesterday's budget.
I don't make a lot of a budget, to be fair. I think it's a scummy attempt by the Conservative Party to try and regain any bit of ground that they can get, really. I think they know they're in a difficult situation and it's not going to pan out well for them.
We need to see results on the NHS, seeing a GP, things that really matter, not beer duty.
There's nothing for the ordinary working man. Conservatives and Labour, they're both the same. There's no difference. We need a change.
To other news, average house prices rose by 0.4% last month, the fifth monthly increase in a row. Halifax found property prices grew by 1.7% on an annual basis compared with 2.3% the previous month. The average British home now costs just under £292,000. It comes after the government cut capital gains tax in yesterday's budget, which is expected to encourage more house sales. MPs are warning the Post Office is not fit to run any compensation schemes for victims of the Horizon scandal and should be excluded. The Business and Trade Committee published recommendations for delivering payments to hundreds of victims, describing efforts so far as abject failure. The committee says an independent body should be appointed to lead the process. The chairman described it as a national disgrace that only £1 out of every £5 of the budget for compensation has been issued to sub-postmasters. A new train service between London and central Scotland has been given the go-ahead. The rail regulator approved plans to operate 4 daily return services between London Euston and the city of Stirling. It'll create new competition for LNER, which currently operates services on that route. Grand Union Trains is due to launch its new services by June next year. Nationwide Building Society has reached an agreement to buy Virgin Money in a deal worth £2.9 billion. The planned takeover would create a combined lender worth more than £366 billion. It would eventually see the Virgin Money brand disappear, though Nationwide says it has no plans to cut jobs in the near term. A woman who loaded a gun on a film set that was fired by actor Alec Baldwin has been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Hannah Gutierrez-Reid was found guilty of causing the death of 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins. She was killed when Mr. Baldwin fired a gun as part of the making of a film in October 2021. Prosecutors allege that Gutierrez-Reid unknowingly brought live ammunition onto the set, disregarding gun safety protocols. She now faces up to 18 months in prison. Mr. Baldwin is also due to stand trial in July. And finally, last month was the world's warmest February in modern times, in another sign that the world is running out of time to deal with the climate crisis. Each month since June last year has seen new temperature highs for the time of year. It puts the world temporarily above the 1.5-degree threshold, beyond which, over the long term, the worst impacts of climate change are expected. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It is 10:06. You're listening to and watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
He's done a bit of other work here, can I just tell you?
I'm just doing a bit of research here. This noisy ape next to, as my father would say, is Carol Malone, who's in for Bev Turner today. She's still up in the wilds of Cumbria. Very nice part of the world, actually, Whitehaven.
Have you been?
I've never been to the Lake District. Isn't that terrible?
Well, you should go. It rains a lot, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
It looked absolutely stunning, and we had some really interesting guests. So this is the day after the budget, and often, Malone, the detail of the budget begins to unravel within 24 hours, and it's already unravelling because people can see that while he is cutting national insurance, people are still going to be paying more tax.
You know, when you tear apart that national insurance rise, for most people that means about 37, 38 quid a month extra in their pay packets. I mean, that's not a supermarket shop.
No.
So it's not going to make that much difference. That's not going to woo people into voting Tory again, which is what this budget... You know, it was... Do you remember how this was heralded 3 months ago? We were all waiting for the spring budget because it was going to change everything and it was going to give the Tories the oomph it needed to win the election. This is not going to win them the election.
£37 wouldn't pay for your daily trip to TK Maxx?
TK Maxx or to the bakery. I do go to the bakery a lot.
She bought me very nice cakes today, but I've lost half of it. Somebody's eaten it. Now, Labour called it a desperate act and said the Tories need to come up with something a bit more exciting. We're going to talk now to Philip Davis, Conservative MP for Shipley, who's a great friend of this programme. Philip, morning to you.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm just looking at your majority, Philip, at the last election, 6,242. How much bigger is your majority going to be at the next election as a result of Jeremy Hunt's budget, Philip?
Well, I think I've got a mountain to climb at the election, Andrew. Whatever the budget had done. To be honest, the budget was very good for me because in the budget, you probably didn't notice it, but £14.4 million was allocated for Bingley in my constituency for a brand new swimming pool and improvements to the Market Square there. So actually, the budget is very good for my constituency. So I was rather delighted with that. But on the bigger picture, look, I mean, I don't think anybody is claiming that yesterday's budget is going to change the dial massively in terms of the opinion polls. It was more steady as you go. And, of course, the Chancellor can't win, Andrew, because if he'd done sort of something eye-catching and radically reduced taxes, you would have said it was an irresponsible giveaway that he couldn't really afford.
I'd have welcomed it with open arms.
Philip, you're saying it was supposed to be as steady as you go. It wasn't. We were all keyed up for something huge. We were watching it yesterday and waiting for the rabbit to be pulled out of the hat, and it never was. But interestingly, tell me what you think about this. Norman Lamont yesterday said, who was former Chancellor, said it was a much bolder budget than many people realise. How? Explain that.
Well, I think what Norman refers to is the fact that Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak were setting a path to abolishing national insurance contributions, which in effect is very bold and quite a radical departure. And he did cut taxes not just on national insurance but also on some of the capital gains tax. And so I think he was making some bold decisions. He actually had got the Office of Budget Responsibility and the Treasury to agree that if you cut taxes on capital gains tax, you get more income. So that was a big start of them actually accepting that argument. So maybe it was better than people think it was. But look, I accept it. It wasn't perhaps a dial changer. But look, we've got to stop being hooked on public expenditure. If we're going to cut taxes, the only way you can do that really is if we stop being hooked.
Philip, the Tories need a dial changer. You're months away from an election. Your poll rating is 20-odd%. You need something huge, don't you?
Well, look, I'm not sure that the right solution is to sort of be irresponsible in order to try and turn the polls around. I don't think that in the long run works. I think doing the right thing is the thing that works. And maybe what it really needs is it needs a start of a new parliament to have a new contract with the public, which is about how we can't live on the amount of public expenditure we've got at the moment, and that actually cutting that is the only way to deal with the tax burden. And of course, actually, Jeremy Hunt, I think, did actually start down that path by actually saying that actually increasing public expenditure wasn't the solution. It was actually improving productivity in the public sector, which was necessary. And he's absolutely right about that. And if he can actually change the narrative where we say, actually, it's not just about pouring more money into the NHS, it's actually making sure the NHS uses the money it's got already more effectively. If we can change the narrative around that, then that actually will be quite radical in the long run.
What about pensioners, Philip? They are the key constituency that turns out for the Tories. If the Tories carry on with this path of cutting national insurance, that's not going to help pensioners a little bit because they don't pay national insurance. A tax cut would have benefited everybody. Why didn't he do that?
Well, probably because a cut in income tax is more expensive than a cut in national insurance. I suspect that's probably the main reason. But the other thing I think, Andrew, is I think most people would accept that over the last 14 years, when we've had some tough times, obviously, we had to come out of the financial crash. And then just as we got back on our feet in the 2019 election, we had the pandemic, which did us in for another £400 billion. So we've had tough times. I think most people would accept that the group who have probably done best in that 14 years is pensioners, because of the triple lock, which has probably seen the biggest increase in the state pension probably in history. And of course, pensioners are getting an increase of over 8.5% in April. So I wouldn't accept the premise that pensioners are doing badly out of this government. I think they've done pretty well, and I don't think they would begrudge workers getting something out of this budget as well.
You know, there's lots of people saying that this was a centrist budget designed to out-Labour Labour. Do you think that's right?
Well, there was the thing about non-DOMs, which, I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of, because I always took the view that we've always taken that actually if you do with that, you won't actually raise a huge amount of money. You may not raise any money at all. So look, we'll see now, won't we? We'll see whether we were always right or whether Labour were right. We'll see about that. But that was clearly a political move, yeah. And obviously there was a nice dig at Angela Rayner in there, which I think we all enjoyed across the country in the budget as well.
Philip, explain what that dig was, because I laughed out loud, and I know it's all to do with the fact linked to her purchase of her council house. Just explain what he was getting at.
Well, he was mentioning stamp duty, and he was also mentioning capital gains tax on multiple occupancy homes. And he was making the point that Angela Rayner would be particularly interested in that part of her speech because of her what appear to be unusual living arrangements when she was first married. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Well, stay there, Philip, because we're going to just listen to what exactly he said to Angela Rayner, and if we can see her reaction, she was puce with rage. This was the Chancellor yesterday.
Also been looking at stamp duty relief for people who purchase more than one dwelling in a single transaction, known as multiple dwellings relief. I see the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party paying close attention, given her multiple dwellings.
She was angry. But Philip, did you notice stony face there was Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, because I think she could be in a bit of trouble on this, because if she didn't pay capital gains tax when she sold the house, because she was living in another house with her husband, why didn't she?
Well, I certainly think she's got an awful lot of questions to answer, and I haven't seen a satisfactory answer to them yet. But look, that'll be a matter for her and the tax authorities. But it certainly brought the house down in the House of Commons yesterday, and she was, you're right, she was absolutely fuming, which just made it even funnier, to be honest.
Philip, just before you go, the red wall voters are fed up, disillusioned Tories are fed up. Is this budget big enough? Is it enough to get them all back on board?
Well, no, absolutely not. It's not. It never was going to be. Look, the single biggest thing we've got to do to get the red wall voters back with us is to sort out the immigration problems. That's the single biggest issue that needs sorting out for those voters, both legal and illegal immigration. The Prime Minister's made a good start on legal immigration by changing the rules, which will reduce the immigration numbers by about 300,000 a year. That's a good start. He needs to go further, but it's certainly a good start from where he inherited. And we've got to get the flights to Rwanda off the ground. Those two things will have a much bigger impact on winning back voters than what happened in the budget yesterday.
Is there going to be election in May before you go?
Absolutely no chance. I mean, I don't know. I'm not privy to this information, but I'd be absolutely flabbergasted if there was an election in May. I mean, to be honest, the Prime Minister's always said that it was going to be in the second half of the year. I think the Labour Party are trying to cause mischief and trying to do what we did to Gordon Brown when he bottled the election, when he genuinely did bottle the election, when he was going to call it and then didn't. But we are not in that category. Rishi Sunak has always said it's going to be in the second half of the year.
All right, that's Philip Davis, Tory MP. Of course, if Labour were here, they'd say they're not trying to do that, but that's exactly what they're trying to do. We heard John Ashworth, one of the, I think he's a shadow, whatever he's the shadow minister of, laying a £10 bet it's going to be an election in May.
Yeah.
And they are going to say, when there isn't an election in May, ease for it, ease for it. Margaret Thatcher's very word. Now, still to come, it's going to be a rematch, isn't it, between those two titans of politics, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, later this year. You'd get your vote out of those two.
Oh, it's hard because neither's very good. There's only two people in America that is nobody better than these two.
And you saw that Michelle Obama has announced publicly she is not interested.
See, that was the big hope, wasn't it?
Wasn't
that
it?
she was going to step in at the last minute, but...
I would definitely vote for Trump, because Biden, I don't think he even knows
Well,
who he is
I mean, I
anymore.
think if that's my choice, I'd be voting for Trump.
What do you think? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they commit a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off, and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay. They show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But it is but there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you no, it's easy. If it's
that's
easy,
an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:21. You're with Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearson and Carol Malone. We have our panel with us. We've got the president of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, who's normally sparring with Carol Malone.
I'm missing her. This is normally Sam and my slot.
She's not missing you. And the political commentator, Jonathan, is with us too. Good morning. A newcomer to this show, I think.
It is.
So let's talk to you first of all. The budget. What did it do for you?
Very little.
Right.
I put out a sarcastic tweet saying that Conservatives have completely nailed it. Sunak is going to have double-digit leads next week. It's all they'll talk about in the pub, the 2p cut to national insurance. A couple of my followers actually thought I was being serious, which disappointed me, if anyone has followed me at all. Yeah, but I think the point that most people understood that it was a joke, because most people know that the Conservatives are not going to be able to save themselves with this budget. I think that they did do a couple of interesting things. They boxed Labour in on the cut to national insurance and also on the abolition of the non-doms. So that, but you know, if Labour's going to do that anyway, it's not going to turn people off voting Labour. The point is it going to turn the dial on the Conservatives' election prospects? And the answer is categorically no.
What do they need to do, do you think?
I don't think they could have done it. I think
is there anything they could have done?
I think that at some point we have to say the Conservatives can't actually do anything. People have made up their minds. I think when, you know, in the words of Boris Johnson, who I'm not in the habit of quoting normally, but, you know, when the herd turns, it turns.
But don't you worry about the fact that in every policy Starmer's ever put forward over the past 2 or 3 years, he's had to row back on it within weeks because it's unworkable, it's uncosted. None of his policies work. So, and that's while he's in opposition. We know they're not going to work. So how is it going to be when he takes the big job?
I don't know if we know that if we know that things aren't going to work. I personally thought that I think that the decision to ditch the green investment, the £28 billion, was a big mistake. Look, we don't know. None of us knows. I'm not even sure if people in the Labour Party front bench know how Labour will be in government. Because obviously, at the moment, Starmer is in opposition mode and he's incredibly cautious by nature. You know, I'm reminded of that famous sort of analogy about Tony Blair, sort of, you know, walking on a polished floor with a Ming vase before he got to power. Very, very cautious. And the result of that was that Labour wasted its first term in office. I really hope that doesn't happen.
But we know that the party have said they're not going to raise taxes. So how are they going to pay for all the things they say they're going to change? The NHS, you know, public service, they're going to give everyone money. How are they going to do that?
Well, I think there are lots of things you can do. You don't need to raise income taxes. There are other taxes that you can raise. I mean, I'm obviously not Rachel Reeves, so I'm not in charge of this. But if I was there, then I would be, you know, significantly raising income on raising taxes on the very wealthiest, for example, more windfall taxes, financial transaction taxes.
This has always been Labour's policy, hasn't it? Hit the rich, hurt the rich. But, you know, the IFS was really clear this week, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and they were upset about the non-dom thing because they said you will drive wealthy people out of the country.
Well, I think that, well, there are economists on both sides of that argument. I'm not sure it's about hurting the rich. It's about asking people with the broadest shoulders to carry more of the burden. I'm actually in favour of taking the lowest paid out of income tax altogether. I think that, you know, the decision to freeze...
Reform UK, they're going to take you out to... That you're out of the tax...
Well, I think that... Well, look, I think that it's not socialism to ask the poorest to pay more.
You're a Richard Tice man.
I'm definitely not a Richard Tice man, but I do think... Yeah, obviously, we probably disagree on the thresholds themselves, but I think we have to remember that in the 1970s, it was completely normal. In fact, it was written into law that the personal allowance had to rise with inflation. There was a special amendment that two Labour backbenchers actually added in the 1970s, the Rooker-Wise Amendment. And I think that should be the case now. It should be absolutely normal that we should increase the brackets, but particularly the personal allowance, so that people can keep more of their money when they're lowest paid.
Let's bring Sam Lister in here, because the personal allowance being frozen until 2028 is a disaster for a lot of your readers who are pensioners, because some of them are going to now be dragged into tax. So they may be getting 8.1% rise because of the triple lock, but they're going to lose money in tax. And there was nothing for pensioners in that budget.
No, and I think I did question the Treasury on this yesterday, because obviously that's a key thing for my readers. I think the view, well, there's two things. One, cutting income tax costs a lot more than cutting national insurance. So they just don't have the money to cut income tax in the same way they do for national insurance. But also, I do think there does seem to be a sense from them that actually, because of the triple lock and the last couple of years, there's been a big rise in the triple lock. As I pointed out, only matching inflation.
Right.
Let's not forget that. But there has been a big rise, which has been very costly. And so I think they think, actually, we want to target workers, we want to help businesses, because effectively national insurance is a tax on work. And so they want to kind of focus on the economy, on working-age adults, and go for them for a little while. And I think budgets are always about priorities, aren't they? And I think they feel that actually pensioners have been the priority in the past and they're shifting to working age adults at the moment.
It's interesting, the Resolution Foundation, left-wing admittedly, said it was a stunning and spectacular U-turn on pensioners by the Tories and probably politically misguided.
I mean, I think there is a lot of anger. Certainly, the people we deal with on a regular basis, Silver Voices, for example, I know a friend of GBNews as well. They are incandescent about this. They feel very angry and let down that pensioners didn't get anything essentially in this budget. But you know, there's not much money to go around, and when you're the Chancellor, you've got to make some choices. And he's made his choice, and it wasn't pensioners.
We should talk about two other pensioners.
Yes, we should.
Biden versus Trump. Let's go to you first. What a choice! A population of 330 million.
And it comes down to that.
Two.
I don't know. I mean, I'm absolutely baffled. I just think the Democrats, why are they allowing this to go on? If they want to have a fighting chance of stopping Trump, they cannot keep with Biden. They just cannot keep with Biden. And it's insanity. I mean, we've seen time after time in recent weeks, it seems to be getting worse. The number of mistakes he makes every time he is... And I say wheeled out because I've been to a press conference...
He has to be held up now when he's out.
I've been to a press conference in Washington with him and the Prime Minister, and it effectively did feel a bit like they were wheeling him out, I'm sorry to say. And I think that's a very sad state of affairs for the leader of the free world.
Sam, this week, Kamala Harris, the deputy
who's useless.
president, she said this week, you know, Trump has to be stopped. And I thought, well, you've had 4 years to stop him. We've not heard a peep out of Kamala Harris in the 4 years she's been in office. I thought she was going to actually run it from behind the scenes.
Well, she's been very deliberately sidelined by the Biden administration.
Because Biden doesn't like her.
Because they saw her as a threat, and so very early they gave her the most toxic issue, which is immigration on the southern border, and she's been
gone
very
through the roof.
Right, but she's very much been kept down, which I think was a mistake because she was naturally going to be.
Well, the thing is, if you're deputy president, you should get yourself back up again. You know, that's the job. But what is interesting is that his voter base now, his fan base, where the people that are coming to him very quickly now, you won't believe it, are people of colour, black people.
You mean for Trump?
For Trump, and Latinos, which is incredible.
Latinos have always been a big demographic for Trump.
I think that because keep them out.
Yes, but because a lot of people, you know, who've come from Cuba, for example, are very, very wary of the left, and so there are specific things going on. So he's actually always had quite a strong Latino base. No, he hasn't had young black people, and I'm not entirely sure how many people are actually going to go for Trump in the end. There's a long way to go between now and November.
This is typical of the left, is that you say that. You're trying to suggest that isn't true, but the polls have been done, and young black people, he's ahead. He's way ahead.
Look,
and they're saying Biden has done nothing for us, so we're going to go for the guy who says he will.
I think it's an extraordinary situation we find ourselves in. If you had looked a year ago, people generally thought Trump was down and out because we saw in the midterms, for example, that he was a vote loser. The people that he was supporting were actually losing. You know, I remember that Carrie Lake, for example, in Arizona, was a big example of that. You know, she went full in for Trump. She went full in for the 2020 conspiracy lie about Trump having won the election, and she lost. And so that was seen to be a sign that things were turning. And now I think perversely, the number of indictments against him have actually drawn people towards him.
Let's just say that. Let's just talk about that. 92 charges against him. So.
It doesn't touch him, though, does it? It does help him. It motivates his supporters.
It does.
They feel it's a great injustice. Yeah, they do. And so, I mean, it's such a strategic mistake by people who hate Trump to keep going after him in this way because it just boosts him every single time.
Who does Rishi Sunak want to win the presidential election?
He won't be around.
He won't be around, true. But you'd wonder... I don't think he'd tell us.
No, I mean, they never tell us because ultimately they have to work with whoever is in that office. It really doesn't matter who it is. It just has to happen. But I think for Starmer, could you imagine Starmer and Trump? I think that's going to be a very difficult relationship.
Very difficult relationship. They're coming back. Still to come, we're going to be talking about how EastEnders has depicted Milton Keynes as a drug-infested dump.
I have to tell you, it's not just EastEnders. A lot of places. Coronation Street does it all the time. I'll tell you when we come back.
Right,
anyway,
I don't watch
that much more after your morning news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Carol, thank you very much. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Jeremy Hunt says the Conservatives' ambition to end national insurance won't happen anytime soon. Around £10 billion has been spent on a 2p cut to the insurance rate, but its benefits are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. The non-dom tax status has also been scrapped, meaning that wealthy foreign residents will no longer get a tax break. Average house prices rose by 0.4% last month, the fifth monthly increase in a row. Halifax found property prices grew by 1.7% on an annual basis, compared with 2.3% the previous month. The average British home now costs just under £292,000. A new train service between London and central Scotland has been given the go-ahead. The rail regulator approved plans to operate 4 daily return services between London and Euston in the city of Stirling. Grand Union Trains is due to launch its new services by June next year. Nationwide Building Society has reached an agreement to buy Virgin Money in a deal worth £2.9 billion. The planned takeover aims to create a combined lender worth more than £366 billion. It would eventually see the Virgin Money brand disappear, though Nationwide says it has no plans to cut jobs in the near term. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2751 and €1.1700. The price of gold is £1,693 and 1 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,658 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come. Have you ever been to Milton Keynes? Well, the BBC seems to think it's a bit of a dump if EastEnders anything to go by.
But first, in a new GB News series, Innovation Britain, we're looking at the success of British manufacturing around the country.
We've come to Tunbridge Wells and we're not just in any machine shop. Jota are very special. Now, who are Jota?
So Jota, we're a World Endurance Championship race team. Along with the motorsport heritage, you obviously need a lot of manufacturing background to support this industry. And that's why we got this dedicated machine shop to support exactly that.
And how important is the motorsport industry to the UK economy?
Oh, it's absolutely massive, you know. 7 out of 10 F1 teams are based in the UK. I mean, it's a £1 billion industry. We're a global leader in this economy, in this sector, employing thousands.
And how do small shops like this contribute to that massive industry?
I mean, like the background of us, we are doing a lot of R&D work. I mean, the technologies, they're not even out there yet to the general public. We come in, we design the process and the parts, and eventually you'll see these parts being manufactured in the millions by big OEMs.
And what is it about having a small machine shop like this that lets you do such advanced engineering?
I mean, the background of that, it's about being quick to react. Where we work in the motorsport industry, you know, when a part's needed, it might land on our lap sort of 5 o'clock in the evening. That's needed for the next morning. With that, we develop the processes, how we can go and develop things and get them out there to industry quick. The technology here that we do in motorsport, that trickles down to the automotive sectors. And it's things like you see in your family car, you know. You can thank people like us for why you're getting your MPG.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. it's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of oestrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do. If
or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it, rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back now. People in Milton Keynes are calling on the BBC to apologise for making the city seem like a slum in an episode of EastEnders.
Duff. Well, let's take a quick look at what they're complaining about. What was that?
Oi! Oi! Was this you, is it?
Don't know what you're talking about, mate.
My car, my tyres, come on!
What, us?
Sorry about that. What I was supposed to do was hum the theme tune of EastEnders, but as I haven't watched it for about 25 years...
Have you ever watched it, Piers?
I did when... I watched it in the days when Angie and Den were in EastEnders.
That was a very long... That's 20
long
years
time ago.
Yeah,
and actually, I sat next to Anita Dobson at a charity dinner the other night. She's absolutely lovely.
She's a gorgeous... She's a very elegant lady.
Very. And she said people still come up to her in the street and say...
Of course.
I miss you in EastEnders.
And
she hasn't been in it for 20 years.
She's a very serious actress now. Is she happy about that? Because a lot of people always go, no,
no, she's absolutely fine about it. And people came up to her all night at the dinner and she was absolutely lovely. She's in Doctor Who at the moment. I said, are you a Doctor Who girl? She said, no, I'm his mum. Now, the BBC have told this programme they won't be commenting on the row.
Funny that.
But somebody who is commenting about the row about Milton Keynes is the MP for Milton Keynes North, Ben Everett. Ben, morning. Have you not had a bit of a sense of humour bypass here? Is it really bad the way they projected your fair constituency?
Well, it's definitely not the characterisation that Milton Keynes would welcome. It doesn't represent the Milton Keynes we know or the people in it, and that's what's got people so hot under the collar. But yeah, Andrew, I'll be honest, it's not the biggest thing I've been working on this week.
but what has upset some of your constituents? Is it the idea it's a drug den or a bit of a dump?
Well, to be honest, Milton Keynes is wonderful. It's vibrant, it's growing, it's a city of the future. We've got lakes, we've got canals, we've got amazing businesses focused on technology, and it's genuinely the best place in the UK to live and work and grow a family. And that, of course, did not come across on EastEnders, and that's what's got people so hot under the collar.
Have you ever watched an episode of Coronation Street, ever? Have you not? I'm asking you seriously because...
I've seen a bit of Corrie in my time. But
Corrie is full. Corrie's one is set on cobbles in a very kind of rundown area. It has stories about child trafficking. It has drug stories. It has addiction stories. They're in every single soap, and the area that they're portrayed in are not good. So it's not just EastEnders who's doing this. You're being a bit oversensitive, don't you think?
Hey. Bev, if Corrie come for Milton Keynes, I'll come for them as well. It's my job to stick up for MK, and that's what I'm doing.
If they asked you to appear in the programme, Ben, as the local MP, would you go in it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, bring it on. Let's
you
do
can't have it both ways. You can't have a go and then say you go.
I think. But I mean, Milton Keynes. I haven't been to Milton Keynes for a long time, Ben. I remember getting lost there in the 2001 general election when I was spending the day with Mrs. Thatcher. And the reason I got lost, there are so many roundabouts and multi-storey car parks. They all look the same.
That was a massive name drop, Andrew.
Sorry,
it
was a bit.
He does
it all the time.
And of course, I was devastated because I worshipped Mrs. Thatcher and I was so enjoying spending the day with her, but I never found her again.
But that was always the big criticism of Milton Keynes.
Our roundabouts are one of the things we're proud about.
But it was one of the big criticisms, wasn't it, that you got there and you never got out?
No.
Because everything looked the same. Now, I'm not saying it's the same now. I'm sure times have changed. I mean, you mentioned lakes there. I didn't know there were lakes in Milton Keynes, but it's good. We're waiting for people from your constituency to let us know what they think.
Well, people in Milton Keynes are genuinely proud of being from Milton Keynes. We've got a real identity. We're really proud of our city. You mentioned the lakes there. We've got more miles of shoreline than Jersey in Milton Keynes because of all of our beautiful lakes. In terms of green space, we've got more acres of green space than Hyde Park. And we've got a wonderful canal, the Grand Union Canal, running right through Milton Keynes. It's genuinely a beautiful place to live.
It's you're a very good ambassador for the town, it has to be said.
Yeah.
Are you a local boy? Are you
local,
is my
job.
Ben? Are you local? Were you brought up there?
I'm not born and raised. I've been in Milton Keynes about 15 years, so I know it very, very well.
And do you still have the... were they metal, the cows on the outskirts of Milton Keynes? Do you remember them?
The concrete cows, yeah. We've still got them dotted around the place. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's, again, it's part of the kind of the unique cultural identity that you get in Milton Keynes, these quirky little things. And we've almost got a culture separate to us ourselves in MK because we're a new town. People that are born there kind of get the vibe. They know that we're the city of the future. They're really forward-looking. We embrace technology. So we've got these little delivery robots. They've been wandering around Milton Keynes delivering people's groceries for the last 5 years. And then you've got the people that move there. They move specifically to buy into that vibe. So it works really well.
So why do you think the BBC haven't... We've asked them for comment and they won't. Why do you think they won't defend what their depiction of Milton Keynes?
Well, I mean, that's up to the Beeb, obviously, to defend themselves. I've asked the producers if they want to come up. I'll give them a tour. We'll go and see some of the many sites that you can see in Milton Keynes. You know, if they want to have a bit of a ski, you can have a morning skiing in Milton Keynes, and then you can wander over to the shops. We've got a Harrods in the city centre.
Really?
You can do a little bit of shopping.
She's going now.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
She's the world's this is the world's biggest shopper.
I need to be careful with this because I might have a car full here.
Yeah.
You should set up a holiday company.
Welcome.
You should set up a little holiday company because you sold it. Lakes, ski slopes, Harrods.
So, and have you been on the artificial ski slope? Is it fun?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. 2 of my 3 kids learnt to ski on that ski slope.
Don't you burn yourself when you slip on that? Don't you get like carpet burn? Oh, is it snow?
It's snow?
I thought it was that fabricy stuff.
Actual snow.
Oh, proper snow. Oh, my God.
Oh, no, none of that. It's now but best in Milton Keynes.
Wow.
Well, Ben, best of luck with the campaign, and you're a great ambassador for Milton Keynes. Is it in... I don't watch EastEnders. Is it in the programme every night now? Is Milton Keynes going to be an integral part of the soap?
Yeah, apparently this is sort of an ongoing storyline. So the BBC do have chance to redeem themselves and show a better side of Milton Keynes. I'm not holding my breath, Andrew.
I think they should go to the ski slope with you. Great to talk to you. That's Ben Everett, who's a very passionate and proud MP.
I want to go.
Well,
I really will.
She'll have to go now.
Yeah, but we were laughing at this story this morning, saying he's overreacting a little bit. But I mean, if it's got all that, he's not.
It does sound great. Now, talking of constituencies in the firing line, up next, Labour-run Birmingham Council. That is the biggest local authority in Europe. It's having to make cuts of £300 million. The council tax is going up 20%, and they're also cutting back on refuse collections. They've made a big mess of this, haven't they? We're going to be joined by one of Birmingham's Labour MPs, so don't go anywhere. You're with Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Carol Malone.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. While the cold easterly wind will continue for eastern areas through today, there's also a risk of showers later, but across the west, plenty of sunshine to start the day, and it should stay fairly dry and bright through much of the day across many southwestern areas of England, western areas of Wales, northwestern England, Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland seeing the best of the sunshine through the day, and it will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine. However, the cloud will thicken a little bit, particularly for central areas of England and Wales. That brings a risk of showers this afternoon that could turn quite heavy. There's also a risk of showers into parts of northern England and eastern Scotland throughout this evening as well, but those showers will push further north and west into more northern areas of Wales, possibly reaching Northern Ireland later on in the night. Further south, it will turn much drier and clearer. We could see some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, but also some frost out there, so it could be a bit of a colder start tomorrow morning than this morning. But that easterly wind will continue across eastern areas throughout Friday, particularly northeastern Scotland, and where we'll see some drizzly rain across parts of Aberdeenshire, as well as northeastern areas of England seeing some of that wetter and cloudier weather. Across the south and east, though, it will be a much drier and brighter day on Friday, and it will start to feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine with highs around 12 or 13 degrees. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now, Birmingham Council has signed off on a wave of cuts to services, and it's authorised a 21% rise in council tax over the next 2 years.
Well, joining us now is the Labour MP for Birmingham Selly Oak, Steve McCabe. Steve, are you hanging your head in shame this morning? This is a disaster for the people of Birmingham. 21%, huge cuts in services, restrictions on refuse collections. How have you got it so badly wrong?
Well, I haven't got it badly wrong at all, Andrew. This is a budget that was produced under the supervision of Michael Gove's commissioners. I admit I am terribly concerned about the impact of it, and I don't say that the councillors in Birmingham are blameless, but of course there's another 6 or 8 councillors going bust at this very moment. And in fact, the commissioners are costing over £1 million a year, so that's adding to Birmingham's debts.
Steve, just a year ago, the streets of Birmingham were buzzing, weren't they, Steve? Because you had the Commonwealth Games there. It was held as a golden era, and now the city is bankrupt. So much for a golden era. Should you have even brought the Commonwealth Games to Birmingham? Could this council really afford the money?
Well, of course, the Commonwealth Games were supported from a variety of sources, and I don't think anybody argues that the positive publicity and the business it generated was a bad thing. As I say, this is a matter of real concern for Birmingham now, but we have to ask ourselves how many more councils are going to be in this position before the end of the year,
but Steve,
and how many more people are you going to be interviewing about this?
Does the council not take any responsibility? You know, Michael Gove said this week that that it had gone bust because of woeful mismanagement, and he said that the Labour council had actually harmed the city. Now that's a pretty damning indictment. It's mismanagement, isn't it? It's not lack of funds. It's the funds you had have been mismanaged.
Well, as I say, I don't think the councillors can escape total responsibility, but I defy anyone who's had £1 billion cut from their budget to manage things smoothly. I don't think that's the case. And of course, as I say, Michael Gove's commissioners are actually, they supervise the emergency budget, and they are costing over £1 million a year, which Birmingham taxpayers are having to fund.
You're not going to acknowledge any responsibility for this mess, Steve?
Sorry, say that again.
Are you not going to acknowledge any responsibility on behalf of the Labour group that has run Birmingham for many years now for this financial mess? You can't blame it all on the government, surely.
No, I think I've twice said to you that I don't think the councillors can escape responsibility. They have a part to play in this, and I'd be the first to acknowledge that. But I'm simply saying it's not a one-sided story. There are other elements.
But we know, but Steve, we know that councils invest in properties. They make terrible investments without knowing what they're doing, and the people of the town or the city, the borough, have to pay, and that's not fair.
Yes, Birmingham's problems, I don't think, are around property investment, although that has happened elsewhere, including in Conservative councils. Birmingham's problems are partly associated with an equal pay issue that they failed to deal with adequately, and the purchase of a computer system that has turned out to be a nightmare.
While we've got you, Steve, we must ask you about the budget. Did it send your spirits soaring, the Chancellor's budget statement yesterday?
Well, it certainly set the heather on fire for most people, didn't it? No, I think I'm with the vast majority who would say it was a bit of a damp squib.
And was it fair of him to have that jibe at Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner over her tax arrangements over the council house that she sold some years ago?
Well, I mean, I think that's the sort of thing you would expect. I mean, I don't know whether it was fair or not. All's fair in love and war. I think the Chancellor is a classic example of someone in a glass house, and he should maybe be careful about what stones he's trying to throw. All
right. That's Steve McCabe, who's the Birmingham MP for Selly Oak. Still to come, we're going to be talking about Rochdale Football Club, another football club on the brink of closure. Football clubs are very important parts of local communities. Not that I ever follow football, but we're going to be joined by their chairman, and we're going to be asking whether the new MP, George Galloway, is going to ride to the rescue. Does he even know if there's a problem with the club?
No, he has spoken to them.
Right.
He said he has. OK, this is Britain's Newsroom.
On GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. It is going to turn increasingly windy as we go through the end of the week, and there will be a few showers around. At the moment, there is a blocking area of high pressure to the northeast of the UK, and that is leading to a southeasterly flow. But those southeasterly winds are going to strengthen, and they are bringing a few showers to places as we go through today, mostly around parts of Wales, southwest England, but also some parts of northern England seeing a few showers, though many of us will stay stay dry, and there will be some bright or sunny spells developing too. A bit of a chilly feel, temperatures near normal or a little bit below average for the time of year, and like I said, winds will be picking up, so that will add to the chilly feel too. Later on, and we will see a few more showers across Wales through this evening, but then those showers push into Northern Ireland as we go overnight. Also some showery outbreaks of rain across northeast England and eastern Scotland. Could see something a bit wintry over the higher ground here. Elsewhere, and a lot of dry weather and some clear skies too. In the shelter from the wind, we could see temperatures dropping close to, if not a little bit below freezing in prone rural spots, so a touch of frost first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, still some showery outbreaks across parts of Scotland and northeast England, but most of these will clear away, so a largely fine day. Plenty of dry, sunny weather for many of us, especially as we go into the afternoon, but worth bearing in mind that those winds are going to strengthen further, so although temperatures won't drop a huge amount, it's likely to feel chillier than today.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, thanks, Alex. Still to come, we're going to be talking about the Princess of Wales' brother in the Big Brother house. What's he doing there, apart from coining the cash?
He's going to create a lot of damage, I think, over the next coming weeks, unless Sharon Osbourne votes him out, which she wants to.
It is fascinating. Karen Malone, of course, will speak with some knowledge about this, because she was in the Big Brother house. I voted to keep her in, but they didn't. They kicked her out. You're on Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 7th of March. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Karen Malone.
Hello. Now, Rochdale Football Club is on the brink. The Manchester-based club faces liquidation by the end of the month, but it looks like the club might be saved by a US investor. We'll be joined by the club chairman shortly.
Jeremy Hunt delivered his make-or-break budget, cutting national insurance by 2%. Here's what he was saying yesterday.
A plan to grow the economy versus no plan. A plan for better public services versus no plan. A plan to make work pay versus no plan. Growth up, jobs up, taxes down.
Labour have slammed the budget, calling it a last desperate act. One of their shadow spokesmen for James Murray spoke to GB News this morning.
Yesterday, we saw the budget the Chancellor delivered, but nothing in that budget changes the fact that taxes are going up to their highest in 70 years, that people across Britain feel worse off, that we've had 14 years of economic failure from the Conservatives, and frankly, that's why it's time for change and time for a general election.
And £6 billion is going to be pumped into the National Health Service to cut bureaucracy and reduce waiting times. That money well spent?
No. More, it just disappears, doesn't it?
But do you remember the last system they had? Oh, yep. We've got to go, sorry.
Doing the devil's work, that's how one vicar describes wedding planners. You won't want to miss this story.
Let us know all your thoughts on all our talking points today. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. Here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Carol, thank you very much. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Labour says the government must explain how it will fund a cut to national insurance announced in yesterday's budget. Around £10 billion has been spent on a 2p cut to the insurance rate, but its benefits are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. The non-dom tax status has also been scrapped, meaning that wealthy foreign residents will no longer get a tax break. Sir Keir Starmer says the government is stealing Labour's policies.
How humiliating was that for the government yesterday? We've argued for years that they should get rid of the non-dom tax status. They've resisted that, and now, completely out of ideas, only decent policy they got is the one that they've lifted from us. And I think if you needed evidence of why we should go straight to a general election, it's that. We need change. Obviously, we will keep our commitment to the NHS, so important it is. We'll go through all of the numbers and we'll be absolutely clear. Nothing in our manifesto will be unfunded and uncosted. That is an iron rule for the Labour Party.
Forecasters are predicting household disposable income to fall by 0.9%. That would make this Parliament the first in modern history to see a drop in living standards. We asked residents in Nottingham for their reaction to yesterday's budget.
I don't make a lot of a budget, to be fair. I think it's a scummy attempt by the Conservative Party to try and regain any bit of ground that they can get, really. I think they know they're in a difficult situation and it's not going to pan out well for them.
We need to see results on the NHS, seeing a GP, things that really matter, not beer duty.
There's nothing for the ordinary working man. Conservatives and Labour, they're both the same. There's no difference. We need a change.
Some breaking news now. 2 Brighton fans have been stabbed in the Italian capital ahead of a Europa League match with Roma. That's according to local media reports. The pair, aged 27 and 28, were attacked just after midnight in the Monti neighbourhood by a group of 7 people wearing masks. That's according to the La Repubblica newspaper. The victims were taken to the local hospital in San Giovanni. Brighton is due to play their match against Roma in the first leg of the tournament's round of 16 at the Olympic Stadium this afternoon. In other news, MPs are warning the Post Office is not fit to run any compensation schemes for victims of the Horizon IT scandal and should be excluded. The Business and Trade Committee published recommendations for delivering payments to hundreds of victims, describing efforts so far as abject failure. The committee says an independent body should be appointed to lead the process. The chairman described it as a national disgrace that only £1 out of every £5 of the budget for compensation has been issued to sub-postmasters. Nationwide Building Society has reached an agreement to buy Virgin Money in a deal worth £2.9 billion. The planned takeover would create a combined lender worth more than £366 billion. It would eventually see the Virgin Money brand disappear, though Nationwide says it has no plans to cut jobs in the near term. A new train service between London and central Scotland has been given the go-ahead. The rail regulator approved plans to operate 4 daily return services between London Euston and the city of Stirling. It'll create new competition for LNER, which currently operates services on that route. Grand Union Trains is due to launch its new services by June next year. A woman who loaded a gun on a film set that was fired by actor Alec Baldwin has been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Hannah Gutierrez-Reid was found guilty of causing the death of 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins. She was killed when Mr. Baldwin fired a gun as part of the making of a film in October 2021. Prosecutors alleged that Gutierrez-Reid unknowingly brought live ammunition onto the set, disregarding gun safety protocols. She now faces up to 18 months in prison. Mr. Baldwin's also due to stand trial in July. And last month was the world's warmest February in modern times, in another sign that the world is running out of time to deal with the climate crisis. Each month since June last year has seen new temperature highs, with temperatures in Europe 3.3 degrees above the average throughout the 1990s. It means the world is, at least temporarily, now above the 1.5 degree threshold, beyond which the worst impacts of climate change are expected. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Carol.
Welcome back. It's 11:07. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Carol Malone.
We've got a lot of texts and emails coming in, Malone.
Yeah, we have.
Helen says, the myth that pensioners get huge amounts with a triple lock needs to be put to bed. I get no increase ever, just pay more tax from my work pension. So whatever they say, it's wrong to suggest we get an increase.
Linda says any pensioner who has private pensions or is employed will be taken into the paying tax sector when pensions rise in April, which is fair.
Well, joining us in the studio is Liam Halligan, who has covered more budgets than...
Steady Eddie.
Yeah, exactly. Our business and economics editor.
He's trying to make out he's younger than me.
He's so not. He's nearly as old as me, which is really bad. But anyway.
We know this wasn't a game changer.
No.
And they needed a game changer, and it wasn't.
This was not a pre-election budget. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. I think Labour originally set their hair running. There could be a May election because they want the Tories to look scared, so then they can, the Daily Mirror can dress someone up as a chicken and chase the Prime Minister around Westminster. But I think actually the Tories are quite happy for a bit of this May narrative to keep going, because that means Labour may expose more of their policies and show more of their hand about what they're going to put in their manifesto. All this gamesmanship doesn't mean a row of beans to anyone watching or listening GB News. It's Westminster parlour games.
It is.
Meanwhile, real people are worried about their pensions, they're worried about their mortgages, they're worried about making ends meet. And for those ordinary folk, Carol and Andrew, there wasn't a lot in this budget, I have to say.
The National Insurance Plan, is going to put more money in people's pockets. But it's dishonest for him to say that, because council tax is going up a lot, and also a lot of people, because of the freeze in personal allowances, which you can explain to us, Liam, means a lot more people are going to be going into higher tax brackets.
I remember the first time I started talking about fiscal drag in the GB newsroom, and people were starting to shout, "What do you mean? What is it? Were you dragging me into another room or something?" But let's just think, if the personal allowance is 12.5 grand, right? It stays at 12.5 grand. If your wages go up from 10 grand to 13 grand, that doesn't mean that you keep all that money, because you're dragged into becoming a taxpayer. It's the same further up the income scale. We're now seeing people with, important, meaningful, but pretty average jobs, middle-ranking teachers, middle-ranking police officers, middle-ranking nurses, people who do a wonderful job, but should not be higher rate taxpayers. They should not be paying 40p in the pound. They should be paying 20p in the pound. And yet, because the threshold where you go from being a basic rate taxpayer to a higher rate taxpayer is frozen, as wages go up, as prices go up, you are getting dragged into a higher tax bracket. That is fiscal drag. And the impact of fiscal drag is so much more powerful than the impact of these headline tax cuts.
We call it a stealth tax, but it's a hidden hidden tax, isn't it?
It is a hidden tax. Now,
and he didn't mention it yesterday in the budget
He
speech.
didn't mention it, and he should have, because it was Rishi Sunak who froze tax thresholds, and then Jeremy Hunt extended those tax threshold freeze until 2028. Now, in his defence, in Jeremy Hunt's defence, he gave an interview on the BBC Today programme this morning, and I thought it was actually a really good exchange of views, and he stuck up for himself and his policies, and it's worth just being fair to him for a moment here. I'm not here to do his bidding for a minute, but we deal in facts, right? It is true that for the average worker, if you take the reduction, the combined reduction in national insurance from 12p all the way down to 8p from April, they will be better off because of those two changes, OK? But they'll still be worse off than they would have been, you know, before the fiscal drag was introduced. So it all depends on your starting point. And it is true, because we had a pandemic and because we've got, you know, the biggest war on the European mainland in any of our lifetimes, it is true that the public finances are very, very weak. You can't borrow 400 billion quid and lock the economy down for over a year and expect the public finances to be in the same place. They're not.
While you're there and talking about that, let's talk about the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, because up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, the public thought, because this is what they might not understand, they thought they were going to get a massive giveaway, 30 billion plus giveaway.
Headroom. Do you know the expression?
Headroom,
30 billion headroom.
And suddenly the OBR sticks its oar in, and suddenly that has reduced by a third. Explain to people what the OBR is and why it has so much power, especially when it gets everything so wrong.
OK, back in the day of New Labour, when Gordon Brown first came in the late 90s, he was a very prudent chancellor. He stuck to the Tory spending plans. He was trying to kill the spectre of Labour in the 70s, you know, IMF bailouts, UK literally bankrupt, had a rescue plan by the Americans. We all remember that. We all cut our teeth watching the telly as kids, didn't we? Gosh, this politics and journalism looks interesting. Let's get into it. So post as New Labour came in the late 90s, Gordon Brown was really, really prudent. But then as he became more ambitious and frankly wanted to be Prime Minister, he tried to spend his way to popularity, and he started, I think it's fair to say, really tinkering for always with the fiscal rules. He kept changing his golden rule, kept changing the goalposts. Oh, I haven't broken my golden rule. Yes, you have, Gordon. A young George Osborne was watching this. So when he came in 2010 as Chancellor, he wanted to do something to stop the kind of playing fast and loose with the public finances, which, you know, I'm afraid Brown did in his later years. And so he introduced the Office of Budget Responsibility separate from the Treasury, separate from political control, to put forecasts out there.
But how good are they? Because they keep getting it wrong.
Well, this is the thing. The OBR, particularly since what happened with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng in the autumn of 2022, when they ignored the OBR because she was a new Prime Minister, sick of Treasury officialdom, sick of Whitehall, sick of the OBR. They ignored the OBR, and for all kinds of reasons, including policies that the Bank of England were doing at that time, the markets freaked out. And we all know what happened. And so Jeremy Hunt, there's no way he was going to ignore the OBR. But I actually do think the OBR have become a bit high-handed now. I do think they've taken on the sense that their forecasts are absolutely gospel. And I know it strikes me that Jeremy Hunt, he wanted to do an income tax cut of 2p. That would have helped pensioners, landlords, as well as workers. And I think the OBR pushed back. Yeah. And so I think they compromised on a national insurance cut.
But he was spooked by what happened with Truss.
Absolutely.
And he was fearful that...
And that's why we have a boring budget that's not helping the people it should be helping. Could he not have just said, bearing in mind they're probably not going to get re-elected, he could have just said, I'm ignoring it and went for it?
No, because Whitehall now... What happens if you ignore Whitehall officials? They leak to the press, right? They just... We both know that. We all know that, right? We've all had those calls. Whitehall officials, if they're not getting their own way, and a lot of them are very overmighty, a lot of them think they're activists rather than officials. Sorry, it's true. They will leak stuff to the press to
which is what they did to Truss.
Damage the ministers. And if they started leaking to the press, you know, front page of the FT, you know, Hunt quotes, out of control, says OBR. Even if the financial markets didn't believe that, they would believe that every other trader would believe it, and it would set off a cascade of trades, people selling UK government debt, the price of that debt goes down, the yield on that debt goes up, the amount of money the government has to pay pay to borrow would have gone up, and we'd all be talking about nothing else.
So we've said, Liam, this was the last budget before the election, which will come in October and November, but he could do something in an autumn statement.
He could definitely do an autumn statement. I mean, some kind of spending review that include tax cuts either in the summer or the early autumn, in and around conference period before a general election in October or November.
And could that tax cut come into our pockets before the next election?
It certainly could. You can make tax cuts very. You don't have to wait till the turn of the tax year in April to do a tax change.
Right.
Look at what he did last November. He announced the first 2p cut in national insurance, and he said, "I'm going to introduce it in January," and that was deliberate. So you get tax cut January, tax cut April, tax cut September. And what the Tories hope is that these tax cuts can combine now with incremental decreases in interest rates by the Bank of England.
Right.
Now, I was very much of the view that those interest rate cuts would come, right? 1, 2, 3, spring, summer, autumn. I'm now not so sure. Because you look at geopolitics, it's still nasty. You look at oil and gas prices, they're creeping up. You look at inflation forecasts. Yes, inflation's probably going to come down to 2% in the summer, but there are signs in the markets it's then going to start going up again.
It's interesting, some of the fixed rates in the bank are already going up, the ones that...
Exactly right, Carol, exactly right. And some of the banks put their rates up yesterday under cover of the budget. Put their borrowing costs up yesterday.
They did. And, of course, the Ukraine continues.
Exactly. We know, as seasoned political commentators, it's the economy, stupid, right? I would now put a twist on that. It's the geopolitics, stupid. Yeah. That's what's driving the economy, and that's what, in turn, is driving politics.
God.
Liam Halligan,
he's good, isn't he?
He knows his stuff inside out. Now, still to come, Malone, you've got to be careful about this.
No,
Those refined
you
carbohydrates...
You just stole my link there, by the way.
Do you eat refined carbohydrates?
Yeah, we had some this morning. That's why you look uglier than you did at 8 o'clock this morning.
That's why we love that.
That's a good one.
So it says you look less attractive when you eat carbs for your breakfast.
Yeah. But there's a difference, Carol, between you are wordsmith extraordinaire. You know the difference between less attractive and uglier, and you went straight for uglier.
I normally have for my breakfast a banana and a yoghurt and some raisins.
Today you had all of that, plus a pound of raisin. That's what you had.
Because she wants to make me ugly.
It's all relative, mate.
Thank you. So you're with Britain's News on GB News. That's Carol Malone and, of course, Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Let's talk about the uphill struggle for campaigners as they're ordered to restore the crooked pub.
This is a lovely story. So this is about this crooked pub.
We have a picture of this pub.
Yeah, the most crooked pub in...
No, we don't have a picture, so this has all user imaginations.
Don't worry, I'll find it.
I'm going to tell you
it's
about
here,
this pub.
Isabel, here it is.
The thing that gets me is that this pub is completely flattened, completely, so nothing exists, not even the conservatory at the back or whatever it is. Awful. I have no idea, Scarlett, how they would rebuild that.
I don't know, but they have been ordered to. They flattened it. It was quite, the pub burnt. It was then totally demolished without permission.
And the reason for this was it was an entrance that would have blocked a new housing development or something.
It was going to stop people from making money, absolutely. And South Staffordshire Council has ordered the owners to rebuild the pub. And how they're going to rebuild it to make it look crooked, I don't know. But they should never have knocked it down in the first place. It meant something to an awful lot of people in Britain, and particularly the locals. And the locals, this came about because of a campaign.
As all the best pubs do. Do you have a favourite pub, Eamon?
Yeah, you can have pubs just for character.
Yeah,
just for character, but more than anything. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a drinker, so it wouldn't really matter. But when you go to somewhere that has got atmosphere, and
exactly,
that is the thing. But this is so individual. I just don't know. I'm sure there are no plans of it or how it actually became lopsided or whatever. But we're all saying, well done, and stick that one up your pipe and smoke it.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:21 with Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Cameron. We've got our panel back with us, the political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, and new to this programme, very pleased to say, political commentator Jonathan Lees. Now, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has delivered his predictable reaction to Jeremy Hunt's budget. He called it a last desperate act of a party that's failed. We'll hear a little bit of what he had to say.
Just a little bit.
How humiliating was that for the government yesterday? We've argued for years that they should get rid of the non-dom tax status. They've resisted that, and now, completely out of ideas, only decent policy they got is the one that they've lifted from us. And I think if you needed evidence of why we should go straight to a general election, it's that. We need change. Obviously, we will keep our commitment to the NHS, so important it is. We'll go through all of the numbers and we'll be absolutely clear. Nothing in our manifesto will be unfunded and uncosted. That is an iron rule for the Labour Party. Contrast that with the government, where yesterday, at the end of the budget, the Chancellor made a staggering £46 billion unfunded commitment to abolish national insurance. That's bigger than Liz Truss's commitment, so they've learned absolutely nothing. We need change. It's time for change.
Labour leader Keir Starmer. More interesting is, frankly, what's going on in the Big Brother house, Sam, because Gary Goldsmith, who's Kate Middleton, the Prince of Wales's naughty uncle, he's been causing trouble in the house. Let's have a little listen to what he was saying last night.
No,
we can't listen. What do you think about it? I mean, have you been watching it?
I'm far too busy, Andrew, to be watching.
Of course you have.
But I think it's interesting that he is in there, that he's chosen to go in there, that they've chosen to have him in there. What I'd like to know is, was he booked before it became clear she was ill or afterwards? I think that's quite key.
She needs this like a hole in the head.
She really does, and they've said, and I know this because Carol, her mum didn't want to go, and she tried to persuade him not to go in. But he's obviously been paid a shed load of money. I don't know if he needs the money, because there was rumoured at one point he was worth 30 million or something.
He sold his business, didn't he?
Yeah.
He mustn't. Why else would you go in the house if you're not doing it for the money?
Well, and he seems to me, I mean, I shouldn't say, but he seems like a bit of an idiot to me. And he's jumping about and doing stupid things. And he said he would not talk about Kate, but he has already, which is, as you say, it's the last thing she needs.
Let's have a little listen to what he did say last night in the Big Brother house.
If it's announced, I'll give you an opinion.
I hope she's okay.
But I think the most important thing, well, I know I spoke to her mum, my sister. She's getting the best care in the world. And all the family's done is put the wagons around and look after family first before anything else. But I do think they put a statement out and just said, we'll just take some time to recoup and we'll see you in Easter.
I've heard mixed things about Kate, and I don't want to make a comment, but whatever it is, you want her to come back or in one word?
Yeah, but she's amazing. She'll be back.
It's kind of exploitative, isn't it?
I felt a bit embarrassed, actually. Embarrassed. What did you think?
If I was
unwell and my uncle was on television talking about me, I don't think that I would be entirely thrilled about it. If you can imagine the response in Kensington Palace when it was announced that he was going on, they must have been absolutely furious. We know that William is very, very jealously guards his privacy, as well he might, given what's happened in his life, and that he's obviously very protective of his wife's privacy as well, which again is completely understandable. So there must have been complete fury. It does feel a bit like sort of Meghan's dad's situation, where you have a kind of a wayward member of the family sort of talking out of turn about using his position, using his relative to kind of get money and fame a little bit.
In that house because he is the brother.
Of course, but I think that he would be the first to acknowledge that. I mean, who knows what goes on behind closed doors, but all I can say is that we know one thing, that William and Kate are not going to be happy, even watching with this conversation.
He's vanished, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, let's talk to Sam about this first. You know, Kate has said at some point she will talk about what's wrong with her. And if it's the kind of woman's problem that you don't necessarily want to make public, he is going to blow that at some point, because I know how it works in there. I think he will know. But they put alcohol in there. You know, the makers of Big Brother try and get you loose lip. That's why he's in there. Yeah. And they're going to ply with alcohol, and he's going to blow it, which will be devastating for her.
I think there is a wider problem, though. I think she and the Prince of Wales need to actually take control of this situation.
Yes. You're right.
Because the problem is, and I do understand that, you know, clearly this is a very, very difficult point for the family. They absolutely do want to protect their privacy. It's completely understandable. Anybody who goes through a terrible time health-wise, clearly they would also want to do the same, but they are not part of the royal family. And the problem now is, particularly because the king was so open initially with his health problems,
exactly that.
And once you've allowed that to happen, to then have this kind of veil of secrecy around things, makes it very, very difficult. And I think conspiracy theories are running wild on social media now.
You know, we know as women...
Yeah.
It's a personal thing, but as journalists we need to know. But also, I think the public want to know, because they adore Kate, and it's not ghoulishness that they want to know.
I think people are genuinely
concerned.
It's interesting, actually, what you're talking about, because it's a little bit like what happened when Diana died, when the Queen wanted to do something, you know, the way that things were done, and the royal family had to bend to public pressure, and obviously, we know, famously gave that address to the nation. Sort of to talk about Diana, which she hadn't wanted to do, but that was seen as a kind of a complete sea change in the British monarchy, about the first key stage to modernising, to becoming more media literate, to becoming more less stuffy, becoming more sort of close to people, and that's a sort of, it feels like it might be that sort of moment now as well.
It's interesting what you say, because the minute Charles made public, they said what was wrong with him, and we were told he was getting treatment. We've moved on. We're letting him get on with it now.
Yeah, but they haven't told us what cancer he's got.
No, they haven't.
We still don't know, and there's a lot of speculation about that too. I wonder how sustainable it is.
It's very difficult. I just think the royal family...
head of state.
Exactly, and people are concerned.
They are.
And, you know, whether it's right or wrong, people do kind of... They do need to know
a
little bit more than they know at the moment, I think, because the palace have lost... Both palaces have lost control of this, I think.
With the photograph coming out too, which nobody's published it here or broadcast it here, but it's all over the internet, and it's all in every foreign newspaper.
And this is it. People just go on Google these days.
Incredibly secretive, haven't they? We don't even know what the Queen's final illness was. That was never made public. Piers and I were talking this morning that George VI had lung cancer, and he didn't know. They didn't tell him, and the public certainly didn't know. But they've got to change that, I think.
But that's been happening for, you know, a century. Obviously, in 1936, the entire world knew what was happening with the King and Wallis Simpson, and no one, and the media didn't talk about it here at all. And so things actually haven't changed that much in 90 years.
Do you think Carol Malone's had a lot of carbs this morning?
Well, yes. You know what the story is about? Because this is a story that says if you have carbs in the morning, it makes you less attractive.
You didn't say that about me. You said it made me ugly.
Well, yes, I did.
Charming.
And that was a bad use of words.
You're also very handsome, Andrew.
Thank you. I have had some carbs this morning.
Yes.
So why does it make you look ugly or less attractive?
I don't know.
It makes you bloated and puffy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and which is why I'm like this, because I've been scoffing Pano Raisin out there.
She always brings them in.
Absolutely.
I buy half of
She's a feeder.
Spencer's Pano Raisin before I get in here in the morning. So we've all had one.
Yeah.
But I think we all look better than Piers.
No, he's had one as well.
I buckled to Pesh and I had one as well,
The thing is, I think we all look better than you, though.
Maybe I should borrow Jonathan's beard. Have you always had a beard, by the way?
I go through cycles with my beard. I'm due a little cut at the moment.
I like his trousers. Has anybody look? Put your leg up.
Can't see them.
These are amazing trousers. No,
can you see them?
Oh, can you?
What's the matter with your leg? You're not very fit. Look.
I just didn't want to show my shoes like a model.
And no jokes about legs over. So you often eat?
No. Oh, it's only because Carol's a feeder.
Yeah, I know.
She brings me lovely pastries.
Yogurt and a banana.
I just have a banana.
Right.
Can I just point out this morning you've had a banana, yoghurt, raisins and a pan of raisin?
Only half a pan of raisin because somebody else ate the rest, probably called Karen. But we also have to talk about wedding planners. They're employed by the devil, according to a vicar. What's that about?
I think that there's been a couple of stories in the last week about vicars and their increasing frustration with the demands of modern couples when it comes to marrying in church. And I think, essentially, couples now, they want the social media moment, they want to put the pictures on Instagram, they want this lovely... And the vicars are saying, this is about God. And it's like, well, actually, these people are paying you money and ultimately, you know, if they pay, then they surely get what they want.
A lot of people just go to the church because it's a nice church.
Exactly.
And it's
I
nicer photographs.
If you kind of, you know, make it hard for them to do what they want to do, they're going to stop coming and then you're left with no money.
If you got married, Sam, would you get a wedding planner?
Oh, God, no.
No?
No.
You do it yourself?
Well, they boss you
out. Your mum would get involved?
I honestly don't understand big weddings at all, and I never have. I just think, all that money, I'd rather just, you know...
Have a nice holiday with it.
Yeah.
Me too. I don't know if you're married.
No, I'm single. Very happy.
Would you use a wedding planner if you were to get married?
I very much doubt it. I think there'd be a lot of things I'd have to do before I would consider getting a wedding. I'd have to find someone I want to marry first.
Well, don't eat any carbs in the morning.
No, I think it's very important to be body positive. I think that people should have a balanced diet, including carbs. This story, though, it does seem to be a bit of a battle going on, and it is a serious issue for some people because people have been complaining that they have this wedding and the photographers are treated very badly, they can't get the shots. I think we have to recognise that, you know, obviously vicars are there to do an important job and to, you know, people are getting married, it's a legal ceremony, but at the same time it's the most important day for people in their lives and they want to have good photographs, so there has to be a way forward in this war.
That's boo hiss to the vicar, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, exactly.
OK, well, thank you both. It was great to see you. And it's time for your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Apparently.
Andrew, Carol, thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Labour says the government must explain how it will fund a cut to national insurance announced in yesterday's budget. Around £10 billion has been spent on a 2p cut to the insurance rate, but its benefits are likely to be cancelled out by an expected rise in council tax. The non-dom tax status has also been scrapped, meaning that wealthy foreign residents will no longer get a tax break. Sir Keir Starmer told GB News the government is stealing Labour's policies. Average house prices rose by 0.4% last month, the fifth monthly increase in a row. Halifax found property prices grew by 1.7% on an annual basis, compared with 2.3% the previous month. The average British home now costs just under £292,000. A missile attack killed 3 sailors on a Red Sea merchant ship yesterday, the first fatalities since the Houthis began targeting commercial shipping. The rebel group, who are backed by Iran, claimed responsibility. The Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron says he's appalled by the deaths of the sailors, calling it a reckless and indiscriminate attack. Britain and the United States are continuing retaliatory strikes against the Houthis. Nationwide Building Society has reached an agreement to buy Virgin Money in a deal worth £2.9 billion. The planned takeover aims to create a combined lender worth more than £366 billion. It would eventually see the Virgin Money brand disappear, though Nationwide says it has no plans to cut jobs in the long term. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2759 and €1.1708. The price of gold is £1,689 and 2 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,659 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, and they're here, Tom and Emily.
We are
fresh
here.
from their outing in Westminster. It was fun in Westminster yesterday,
wasn't
it?
It was brilliant.
I liked it.
Happy to report astonishingly good viewing figures as well, which we love to hear. But on to the substance
We
of...
whacked our so-called rivals.
I mean, this has now been the whole week we've been ahead of one of the other...
Whoever they are, can't remember their names.
Talk about tooting your own trumpet, eh?
Well, I mean, if we don't say it, who will? But it's really interesting. Buried within the detail of the budget were some expectations, particularly from the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Limit organisation.
Now, not only did the OBR say something that was almost Trussian yesterday, they said that cutting some taxes could actually raise some revenue. This was the capital gains tax on property, which the Chancellor will be cutting by 8%, and the OBR will say that's actually going to raise more money because there'll be more economic activity. But beyond that, they also raised some questions about migration and whether or not migration is always the economic panacea that people make it out to be.
Yes, essentially, they're admitting, and probably for the first time, that immigration isn't cost-free and that actually it may have some impact on public services. Who knew?
It turns out...
Why do you have to be a clever wonk to know that?
I have no idea, Andrew.
If you issue 700,000 visas, only 150,000 of which are work visas, then perhaps it could have a bit of an impact.
How did this committee get so much power so quickly?
The OBR.
I find it astonishing.
It is remarkable. George Osborne, of course, set it up in 2010, and originally the whole idea of the OBR was to make sure that the Treasury stopped lying about its budgets, because we know that under Gordon Brown there was a bit of jiggery-pokery, moving the spreadsheets around, pretending that things that weren't investment were investment, all the rest of it. But as this organisation has gone on for the last 14 years, the original people running it moved out, new people have moved in,
Bunch
and it's
of
got
failed
this...
technocrats that were described as...
But this is what happens to every arm of the state.
I think
no
it's
matter the noble
impossible.
intentions of the founding, it sort of it gets groupthink and sort of gets absorbed by the state.
It's impossible for these types of watchdogs not to become political, even though, of course, they would dispute that. But we also want to get stuck into this row between J.K. Rowling and the trans journalist India Willoughby. It's all getting rather...
I'm always on her side, J.K. Rowling. She's a hero.
Well, apparently...
Brave, courageous.
Apparently, India Willoughby has actually reported her to the police for what? The crime of misgendering her, which last time I checked is not a crime, but we'll be digging into the legalities there.
The police
Could you go to jail for misgendering?
Thank you and go away.
Yes.
It's none of our business.
They won't. Frankly, it's spats between two people. They've both said mean things about each other.
Right.
They can both get stuffed as far as I'm concerned.
No, but
It's about so much more than that.
We love J.K. Rowling.
We'll get into the detail.
That's them, Britain's Newsroom. You're listening to us now, Britain's Newsroom. News. Tom and Emily coming up at midday, of course. The time is now 11:37.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end he had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake.
From 10 a.m. every Saturday, we want to make you think and we want to make you laugh.
So we will give you all the top stories.
Now we start with a story that has shocked the nation this week.
But we're also going to make it light and fun and bring some entertainment in to make your Saturday morning nice and restful.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panelists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:40 of Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Karen Malone. Look, their emails are pouring in about Milton Keynes.
They're very funny. Paul says, I loathe Milton Keynes and always get lost around there.
As
Can't
did
think
I.
of one important piece of architecture. It's frightful. Everything is so artificial, including the lakes.
But the Tory MP was very proud, Ben.
He was very proud of the lakes.
Everest was very proud.
very
And
proud
M says, wow, that MP has sold Milton Keynes. Well, we were talking about Milton Keynes because it's been depicted as a drug den dump on EastEnders. The Tory MP we spoke to very
But M says she's going.
Yeah.
She says, go on.
No, she says she's on Rightmove looking at the house prices.
She probably found that quite good. Gordon says, oh no, this is about Trump. Is that
There's one about Tracy. Tracy says,
Oh,
I work in Milton Keynes and I live near it. It's a lovely place, but there's a big problem with migrants.
Yes, well.
Tracy, there's a big problem with migrants all
Everywhere.
over the country. Try London. Blimey.
Okay. Now, Gordon says, out of a vast population in the USA, are Trump and Biden the best they can come up with? We ask that question all the time.
Well, it's a population of 330 million.
How can it
and
be?
that's it. And, of course, Michelle Obama put a statement out this week because she wanted to scotch the speculation that she would step in to replace Biden, dopey Joe Biden, who really should be stood down.
But why wouldn't she stand? I don't understand, because, you know, she was in the White House, she knows how it works. I think she's very well
I think it's
she could make a huge difference.
I think it's because she knows how it works, and the idea of 4 years of that, why would you need it? They did 8 years.
You know when her and Barack, they bought... Did you ever used to watch Magnum, you know, their detective series?
Yeah.
They bought that house that Magnum lived in. Big estate.
Well, he's very wealthy. He made tens of millions from his book.
Yeah,
so.
well, I'm guessing that's probably where they're going to spend their time, not running the, the USA.
Yeah.
OK, and now David says we're talking about Birmingham Council. Yeah. There's no excuse for a council anywhere to overspend to the point of bankruptcy. Sack the entire irresponsible lot of those handling the city's finances and appoint a proper accountant. And that's exactly what should be done.
And of course, Steve McCabe, we talked to the local Labour MP.
He wasn't taking responsibility, was he?
He's blaming the Tories.
Yeah.
It is the biggest local authority in Europe,
yeah.
and they've set a council tax increase of 21%. That is enormous.
The Commonwealth Games, they were told not to do.
They were?
They were told that their expenses couldn't take it, and yet they went ahead and did it anyway. And that's you know what that says to me? That's grandstanding on the part of the people in charge of the council. By the way, all the people in charge, they're on six-figure salaries and obscene pensions, all paid for by the people in Birmingham.
Yeah, and of course they'd have got nice tickets to all the Commonwealth Games.
Oh, of course.
I don't even remember the Commonwealth Games being in Birmingham.
No, I don't either. I don't. But I really feel sorry for the people of Birmingham, because council tax is already, you know, it's already huge. They're going to pay an extra 21% there now because
shocking.
I mean, Gove called it woeful mismanagement, but your man earlier wasn't having that.
Well, it'll be a big issue come the election because there are other councils going bust too, of course. Some are Conservative, but Birmingham is the biggest. Just on Martin's talking about the budget, he says the only thing that would save the Conservative Party now is a sudden dramatic action on migration, such as actually turning back the boats and deporting people who shouldn't be here. Yes, Martin, we completely agree. So why won't they do it?
Now, where's the email from Kevin? I'm being told it's a good one. Where's the email from Kevin? Have you got one? We haven't got Kevin.
We can't find Kevin.
No, we don't know where
Kevin is.
We haven't got him.
What's Kevin talking about? Kevin, we're going to find your email.
Oh, he's got photos of Milton Keynes.
He's got brilliant photos of Milton Keynes.
Is he there?
It's on screen.
Oh, here we go,
There we are.
Kevin.
This is
Kevin.
This is from Kevin. If you're listening on the radio, Kevin has uploaded some photographs of Milton Keynes, including the artificial lakes, which are
To be fair, they're very
rather
nice.
pretty.
They are rather pretty. I
And
mean,
he
the
says-
lady before
yeah,
said they weren't, but
yeah.
that is very nice.
And the Tory MP who we spoke to, Ben Everett, said the BBC should apologise over it. They're refusing to say anything at all.
And why do we think that is?
Well, it's all published, isn't it? Okay. Now, still to come, Rochdale Football Club. Rochdale in the shadow, of course, of Manchester City and Manchester United, the aristocrats of the Premier League, fighting to survive. Don't go anywhere, because we'll speak to two very important people from the town. One of them is not George Galloway, the local MP. You're with Britain's News on GBNews. Hello, George Galloway. You're very welcome to come on GBNews.
Yes, please.
We'd love to talk to you. But we're talking to two other people. Stay tuned. Britain's Newsroom.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. While the cold easterly wind will continue for eastern areas through today, there's also a risk of showers later, but across the west, plenty of sunshine to start the day, and it should stay fairly dry and bright through much of the day across many southwestern areas of England, western areas of Wales, northwestern England, Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, seeing the best of the sunshine through the day, and it will feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine. However, the cloud will thicken a little bit, particularly for central areas of England and Wales. That brings a risk of showers this afternoon that could turn quite heavy. There's also a risk of showers into parts of northern England and eastern Scotland throughout this evening as well, but those showers will push further north and west into more northern areas of Wales, possibly reaching Northern Ireland later on in the night. Further south, it will turn much drier and clearer. We could see some mist and fog developing by tomorrow morning, but also some frost out there, so it could be a bit of a colder start tomorrow morning than this morning. But that easterly wind will continue across eastern areas throughout Friday, particularly northeastern Scotland, and where we'll see some drizzly rain across parts of Aberdeenshire, as well as northeastern areas of England, seeing some of that wetter and cloudier weather. Across the south and east, though, it will be a much drier and brighter day on Friday, and it will start to feel fairly pleasant in that sunshine with highs around 12 or 13 degrees. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, Rochdale Football Club is fighting to survive. The 117-year-old fan club needs an urgent investment of £2 million or faces liquidation by the end of the month. Meanwhile, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who recently bought a quarter of nearby Man United for £1.3 billion, which just shows how unfair it all is. The new Rochdale MP, George Galloway, has given his support to the club.
But the biggest new threat that we face is the possibility of the extinction of the proud Rochdale Football Club. And I pledge that I will work tirelessly, I hope with the Town Council, as changed, in 12 weeks' time, to save the Dale. God bless you.
George Galloway.
Do we actually believe he cares about Rochdale
Well,
Football
it's a
Club?
big local issue, and let's talk to somebody who was also on that ballot paper, David Tully, who was the independent candidate who came a very fine second, and also Simon Gate, who's the chairman of Rochdale Football Club. David Tully, let's ask you first, what can you do to save the club?
Good morning. Yes, well, obviously, on my points of view on Rochdale, one of them was obviously the survival of our local football club. So I intended, obviously, if I got over the line, to address the council and, you know, fund and support the club, which has been a part of our community for 117 years. So that were one of my main points and drive to get over the line.
David, what do you need to save the club? How much money is it going to take to save it?
Well, I believe we could do with between £2 and £3 million of investment. Obviously, Simon will know exactly the figures, but obviously me as a local lad and a season ticket holder, along with my two sons, was that was one of my drives to obviously look after the club, which I feel is part of our way of life in the town, and it's got a lot of heritage and a lot of people. I mean, we're only a small supported club, but there's 2,000 very loyal fans, which is it's a part of our way of life, and I feel very strongly that it needs to survive.
Well, let's bring.
I want to go out and do that.
Let's bring Simon Gate in. You're the chairman of the club, Simon. How close to extinction is the club?
But it's without investment, it's very close to extinction. We're not a basket clay-based club. There isn't loads and loads of debt in the club. It's just the club has no cash to continue operating. So that's the requirement on the investment. We're asset rich in that we own our own ground. As I say, it's a well-run club. We probably lose without player trading or cup runs about £500,000 a year, but that's no different to any other club at this level. We just don't have a beneficial owner to smooth the cash flow.
But Simon, there is a US investor interested in buying the club, isn't there? How realistic is that, and how close is the deal?
Well, there is a US investor and other investors that are interested in the club. The US investors signed a letter of intent with us to say that they wish to proceed. But we've been a fan-owned club for 100 years, so this evening we're holding an EGM to restructure the share structure in the club, which allows us to be sold and get investment into the club. So there's a series of things. Tonight's the first step in that. The second step will be the council coming to the table and getting involved and doing their bit and assisting with the requirements of the investor moving forward to make sure the club's saved.
David Tully, what you need is a Ryan Reynolds, the American guy who stepped in to save Wrexham Football Club. That's gone really, really well and has put Wrexham on the international map. Perhaps this US company can do the same for Rochdale.
Well, it'd be really nice. Yeah, because we need a bit of a good fortune in our town, and I think if that happened, that'd be great for the town and obviously our club.
Why do you only get 2,000 fans a week at the matches?
Well, I think you touched on it earlier. We're 12 miles away from probably the best football team in the world at the minute, and 14 miles away from the most famous one. So obviously we're little Rochdale, but we do our thing. We don't,
It's a community hub, isn't it? It's where people who live in the area get together every Saturday. You say you take your sons. Same for everyone else. It's a great place for you all to meet.
Oh, it's fabulous. Yeah, what we have is a great community feel. You sit next to lifelong friends, you stand next to them, people who you've grown up with, and the interaction on the terraces is fabulous. Before the match, after, it is a way of life for us, and and each small club around the country knows that, and they'll feel what we're going through at the minute.
Yeah.
So we're part of the pyramid of the Football League, which is envied around the world, and you start taking Rochdale away. It'll soon, that pyramid will soon have a dent in it.
Simon, what do you want from the council tonight? What have they got to do to make your future viable?
Well, tonight's tonight's not about the council. Tonight's the shareholders voting on a new share structure. But going forward from the council, we need support. We need somewhere to build a community hub where we can train, where we can run education programs, where we can run all our social programs that we do out of, and that will give the additional income.
All right, Sam, we're going to have to lose you. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but we want to wish you the very best of luck,
guys.
because we want Rochdale AFC to still be surviving and flourishing. That's it from me. That's it from Karen Malone. Bev will be back with me next week, but next coming up, it's Tom and Emily.
A migration double whammy. The OBR revises up migration expectations for next year and the year after, while at the same time suggesting that migration isn't always the economic boon we've been told.
And a row has erupted between J.K. Rowling and a trans journalist. We'll give you the latest after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. It is going to turn increasingly windy as we go through the end of the week, and there will be a few showers around. At the moment, there is a blocking area of high pressure to the northeast of the UK, and that is leading to a southeasterly flow. But those southeasterly winds are going to strengthen, and they are bringing a few showers to places as we go through today, mostly around parts of Wales, southwest England, but also some parts of northern England seeing a few showers, though many of us will stay dry, and there will be some bright or sunny spells developing too. A bit of a chilly feel, temperatures near normal or a little bit below average for the time of year, and like I said, winds will be picking up, so that will add to the chilly feel too. Later on, and we will see a few more showers across Wales through this evening, but then those showers push into Northern Ireland as we go overnight. Also some showery outbreaks of rain across northeast England and eastern Scotland. Could see something a bit wintry over the higher ground here. Elsewhere, and a lot of dry weather and some clear skies too. In the shelter from the wind, we could see temperatures dropping close to, if not a little bit below freezing in prone rural spots, so a touch of frost first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, still some showery outbreaks across parts of Scotland and northeast England, but most of these will clear away, so a largely fine day. Plenty of dry, sunny weather for many of us, especially as we go into the afternoon, but worth bearing in mind that those winds are going to strengthen further, so although temperatures won't drop a huge